Hello, everyone. Happy Saturday. Hope you all survived last night. The Merry Hour was a real good time. So, big thanks to everybody who joined us for that conversation. The conversations this weekend, though, are only continuing right now. And I have another guest from Collider with me. I just had Dave Trumbore on recently to talk about one of his new projects and his experience at Collider. And now I am bringing Adam Chitwood into the mix here.
Hello.
I feel like my goal in this episode of my weekend stream is just to make you blush, because I think you are just like one of the best of the best. Seriously, I was telling everybody when Sean O'Connell was on the show that one of my first gigs in our sphere was with Cinema Blend, and how thankful I am that Katie Rich was my editor over there. And then I essentially shifted from Katie to working under you and Matt, and like I'm freaking lucky.
And we ruined everything.
The exact opposite of that. But seriously, you're the greatest, and I'm really excited to get to talk to you a little more about your journey in this weird world that we're in. So
thank you for having me on. I'm sure absolutely no one cares, but I'm happy to chat with you on a Saturday.
If they don't care now, they should, and pay attention starting right now to learn more about Adam Chitwood. All right.
Sure.
When did you realize that you wanted to be in this industry, whether it was just a goal of being a movie critic, of being an entertainment journalist, anything at all?
I mean, I was obsessed with movies from a very young age, to the point that I could work a VCR before I could talk. Like all of my mom's like friends were like, "What is he doing?" I was like a little baby, like I would put my tapes in, and I knew the play button, and I knew how to rewind and everything, but I wasn't speaking yet. So I always loved movies, and I always said growing up, like, obviously my dream job would be to write about movies, but no one's going to pay me to do that. And like, even in like high school, I would annoy my friends because I would like catch them up on like news of like, did you hear that like, this director is doing this thing and it's going to be starring this and it's about this. And they're like, just write it down, dude. I'll read it, but you don't have to tell me all the time. So I started this like really stupid blog that was just for like 10 people. And I was like, that's where I first started like writing about movies, but it wasn't professionally. I didn't share it with anybody other than like, oh, this is a fun thing that I get to do. So
what did you wind up studying in college? Was it a major that was in line with what we do now?
No, Dave and I are scientists.
I didn't know you had that background too. Oh, that's
I have a bachelor of science in zoology, biomedical sciences, and a minor in the history of science. So that was where, I mean, in college, my dad's a doctor, so I was kind of on like and I always loved science, and I was kind of on like that kind of track. But like I started, so they created this minor called the history of science at my college. And I was like, that sounds interesting. And it was essentially like an English minor, because it was just writing a bunch of essays about like Galileo and Copernicus and all kinds of stuff, and studying everything up through like Cold War science and that kind of stuff. So that was a lot of like heavy writing. And then my major was a lot more of, like doing physics and lab work and stuff like that. So
have you been able to apply that knowledge to what we do now at all? Kind of like, Dave has done with his Breaking Bad book and stuff like that?
Not really, other than just like getting mad when people mispronounce zoology. So it's zoology, it's Z-O-O-L-O. So it's if it was zoology, there would be an extra O. So this is where I get very picky when people pronounce it zoology, because it's not zoology. If it was zoology, there would be 3 O's in the beginning. It's 2 O's.
I'm never going to say zoology ever.
But zoology sounds wrong, so you just have people like, you're an idiot.
Zoology.
Why are you saying that? Yeah.
I need to drill this into my brain.
Yeah, well, and so like I loved science for forever. I think in 5th grade I was like became super obsessed with science, but specifically like biology, not botany. Like I did not give a shit about plants. So that's why I went zoology, so I could cut out all the plant stuff and just focus on like living creatures that are not just leaves. So
That's kind of cool. So when you're in college and you're studying that, do you envision yourself heading down a career path that is in line with that? Or did you kind of deep down know immediately when you graduated you were going to shift into our zone?
No, I had no, and again, I always said, like, if someone paid me to write about movies, that'd be my dream job. But like, that job doesn't really exist, especially where I grew up, Tulsa, Oklahoma, where like, Bill Hader is famous, but like, that's about it. Like, they shot The Outsiders here, but that's pretty much it. So I was mostly on the science track until it was just kind of like the stars aligned. Collider was a website I read. They were looking for like interns, and I was like, I'll give it a shot. Like, I'll send off a submission. And it was just Steve and Matt at the time, I think, running the website. And so I wrote up like 2 sample news stories, and then Steve called me like the next day. And then in very true Steve fashion was like, all right. He was like, you can grab something now if you want. So just hop on, and like Matt will send an email with like news that needs to be written up. So go ahead and write something up. So I ended up like on a phone call and then writing my first article, I think was the same day.
Oh, that's so crazy. How long ago was that at this point?
That was 2010. Yeah.
That was 2010. Yeah. And when did we meet face to face? Did we
feel like
face to face the first time on the set of Divergent?
Maybe that was it. I was thinking it was In the Heart of the Sea, but maybe it was Divergent. Maybe Divergent was the first one.
I think Divergent might have came first.
I think Divergent came first because Divergent was one of my first set visits, and it was in Chicago. And I was like, oh, cool, we get to go to Chicago. And then the studio was like, so all the hotels in Chicago are booked up, so you're going to stay at the airport.
Yep. I very much remember that.
Yeah. So we were in this airport Embassy Suites hotel, and they like had
a T-shirt that I bought in that Embassy Suites gift shop.
Yeah. I bought
that T-shirt that says Chicago on it, but I still have it and I still wear it.
That was my big thing back then, because it was, I was new to like doing this, and so every trip I got on, like, you get per diem, like $100 a day, and I would spend 50 of it on like souvenirs for like my girlfriend and my mom and my sister and stuff.
That was one of the most exciting things at the beginning too, is just being able to go to a place like that and to bring something home. That was the thrill of it. Now I don't think they let us do that anymore.
No, studios very quickly caught on, and now they're like, your per diem is for food only.
Which still benefits us. It's like, if I can go on a set visit and have a decent per diem and order like a really nice dinner and some wine or something, I'm very, very happy.
Oh, I'm always, and Matt always told me, he was like, when I get to the hotel on the set visits, he was like, and I look in the fridge and there's gummy bears in there. He's like, those are my gummy bears. So like, I'm always taking the gummy bears. And for me, it's always like at night, like after the set visit, I'm like, all right, what desserts do they have? I'm going to get this giant chocolate cake that's like $18.
I'm more the kind of person that gets back really, really late from being on set for too long and then orders like breakfast in the middle of the night. Because why not? I could do whatever I want there.
Yeah, you can do whatever you want.
So it was you, Steve, and Matt for a good while.
No, actually, so when I came on, so it was Steve and Matt, and I don't know for sure like exactly the workflow of the site then, but they had freelancers like writing news stories, essentially, to cover news. And I know Matt in the early days, and I hope you have Matt on to explain it, because he was working like, when he still tells me like the shifts he worked, I get chills because it's horrible. He would just like work all day long with like a break in the middle of the day, but he had to cover, because he was the only person, he was covering from like 9 a.m. to like 9 p.m.
Jeez.
I was one of a few people that came on as essentially like news writers, and Dave Trumbore was another one. So there would be an email chain that Steve or Matt or someone would drop news in, and it would be like 7 items. And so you would respond with, I'll get this one.
We were still doing that when I first signed on.
Yeah.
I can't remember if it was when I came on as full-time or if it was just when I was freelancing, but I do vividly remember these email chains now that you say it.
Yeah. This was before Slack and before GChat, GChat is what we moved to after the email stuff. But that's what I did for like I want to say like 6 to 8 months. And Jason Barr was another one who, and like after that 6 to 8 months, like there were pretty regularly like a group of like 3 or 4 people that were picking up most of the stuff. And so it was me and Dave, and Jason Barr was one. I'm trying to think of who else. Oh, Brendan was on the site at that time. Brendan Bettinger.
Brendan, yeah.
Yeah. So I think Brendan was also, gosh, I can't remember specifically if Brendan was like already there when I got there or if he was partly there, but he had a day job. And so he would work at night for like 2 or 3 hours. And Brendan was like the nicest guy in the world. I love Brendan. He left the site a few years later to get a real job in the real world. But he was great.
You say that, and that was always the thing that was holding me back early on for a while, especially when I was freelancing and before we also got into that zone where, you know, a lot of the sites that are similar to ours got picked up, snatched up by really big companies. Is I had a very, very, very hard time calling this a real job, but then it did become a real job. I feel like I have. It's like somewhere in the corner there. I actually have my very first official paycheck from Steve. Like when I started working for the site, and it's framed for good luck, but like to see that and to see how it changed when we actually, you know, like there was no denying that we were a real company, and I had to start calling this a real job, even though it felt too fun and too dreamlike to call a real job.
Yeah, it was super strange. And I can't remember the exact circumstances of how it happened, but after that first 6 to 8 months of me just like grabbing news stories, I was brought on like on a full-time basis. And so then I was essentially like a news writer, associate editor, was just kind of doing stuff. But then I think so my very first like trip I did was the Cars 2 press day at Pixar.
Oh, wow.
And that like connected with WonderCon. So Steve and Matt were going to WonderCon, and Steve was like, you should just stay and cover WonderCon with us. And I was like, okay, I don't know what this is. So like at WonderCon, and I remember very vividly, Steve was like, I can't make this interview with Robert Kirkman work. They're doing like The Walking Dead as a TV show. Do you guys want to interview him? And I was like, sure. Like I've never done a huge interview before. Like Michael Giacchino days before was my very first interview for Cars 2.
Wow.
Which is a very bad movie.
Was he your very first interview ever?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. It was either him or Danny. I did do a phoner with Danny Pudi in like the early days of Community.
That's cool.
But Michael Giacchino was my first like in-person interview. And I told him this because we did a Collider Connected earlier this year. So it would be like 9 years previous. But I was like, you were my first interview and you were so nice. So thank you for being a nice person.
I'm trying to think of who was my first in-person interview now. I think my first in-person press day, it wasn't a one-on-one interview, but I'm pretty sure it was the House of the Devil with Greta Gerwig and Ty West. And wow. I know for a fact that my first interview ever was a phoner with Clifton Collins Jr.
for what?
It was for Boondock Saints. People.
That's funny.
So that was that.
Yeah.
But you know, Michael Giacchino. I love Clifton Collins Jr. Michael Giacchino having been your first interview.
Yeah.
Interview is pretty freaking cool.
Well, and it was so the same day I was also interviewing Emily Mortimer, and I was a massive Aaron Sorkin fan. And at that point, she had been cast in The Newsroom, but we hadn't seen it. And this was like his big return to TV. So I was like, can I ask you about The Newsroom? Like I didn't like, I was just very nervous, but she was like carrying around the script with her because she was trying to memorize her lines.
Huh. Yeah. That's really cool. She's super nice too.
Yeah. She was great.
So you go on that huge trip, and what like were your original impressions of the job, and then how did going on trips like that change it for you, especially when you got to spend personal time with Steve and Matt? Because that's why like San Diego Comic-Con and going to Sundance and going to TIFF is like hands down one of my favorite parts of this job, is because we get to like physically be together, and that's cool.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like you, it was like a dream job. It was like I'm getting paid to write about movies. Like this is crazy. So, and I was just writing news stories, but as I said, like that's what I was kind of really passionate about and interested in, was like contextualizing information for an audience who may not be familiar with all of the parts of it. So as opposed to just saying this person's directing this, I could say like, oh, since I've been following this, I know that they just directed this, and this is another project that they may be directing in the future. So here's how this fits in that pipeline. And we know like, here's what this is about. And that's how it can maybe ties to the rest of their filmography. So I was just having a blast doing that. Doing the in-person stuff was just really daunting to me, because it was like, all right, now you're, going to interview Robert Kirkman. And I, I hadn't read the graphic novel. I didn't really know much about it. So I made Matt go with me. So we did 2-on-1 interview. It was me and Matt Goldberg and Robert Kirkman at WonderCon, like 2011. And he was a super nice guy, but it was just like, he just came into the room by himself. He didn't have a publicist or a manager or anything with him at the time. There's like as much time as we needed. We eventually like just ended it. We're like, all right, I think we're out of questions.
It's so nice when that happens, when it's so casual, because usually those types of interviews and press days are so structured, like to the minute, and you are cut off when your time is up. So
it kind of ruined it for me. And the Pixar thing as well, because that was also, it was structured, but it was like a well-oiled machine. Those Pixar press days are. They're very kind of like, and you're like spending time in like the Pixar gift shop. And so you're not upset
sometimes
that you're
too much
reading.
time.
Yes, so
you're
you're not
too much money.
Yes. Those are great.
I think still to this day, one of my favorite trips I've ever been on is when I got to go to Pixar for Inside Out, which is now also my favorite Pixar movie. So that was just everything aligning, except for the fact that I did spend too much money in that gift shop. And I have a couple of t-shirts that I just bought them in the wrong size, and I don't know what would have given me the idea that I would have ever have fit it. Like, I bought like a child's t-shirt that like I could barely get over one arm. Like, what was I thinking? And now I just own this $30 t-shirt for no reason.
I think I did the same thing. I bought like a small because this 10 years ago and a lot of stress before a lot of stress. But like I'm not getting rid of it. So like now my fiance wears it. Like, you know, it's her shirt. I have hopes of one day maybe putting it back on.
Mine's so small, I think it could fit Dewey at this point. Okay, so at this point, all these years later, what's your absolute favorite thing to do? Is it still taking a news story and contextualizing it, or is it doing something like, I don't know, going to Sundance and reviewing a whole bunch of movies?
Well, I'm not like, I wouldn't say critic is like my primary role. That's very much Matt's role. And I like reviewing movies, but it is also super stressful, as you know, especially at a film festival, especially when you have no sleep and you're trying to write about something like, I mean, I know Matt had to like review Cloud Atlas after seeing it at like 8 a.m. in the morning before another movie started. So I can't imagine like that's like under the gun. I do really like contextualizing, especially like big news stories. I mean, I did. One of my favorite things I've done for the site is last year I did this big series called How the MCU Was Made, which was like each week I ran a piece where I got into really the nitty gritty of like the development process, the casting process, the production problems, anything that happened on all of the movies in the MCU. And like a lot of those early films are really fascinating and using quotes and sources and you know, people who were talking candidly about the experience, like, you know, Alan Taylor talking about how when making Thor: The Dark World, like it was fine in shooting, but in post-production and reshoots, they wanted to change a lot of stuff and he got really upset. Or, you know, trying to make sense of the Ant-Man debacle with Edgar Wright and all of that stuff. That stuff is really fun for me, really kind of digging into kind of more, I don't know, kind of like a Mark Harris style, like reporting or contextualizing versus I've never, like creative writing has never been like a super passion of mine or even really a strong suit. Although sometimes when the inspiration strikes, like yesterday I did a kind of like, I sat down and I was like, I watched the West Wing reunion special last night. I think I have something, but I need to kind of noodle around with it. Matt was like, go for it. So like, you know, 40 minutes later, I was like, here's this thing. I think it's okay. I tried to like make sense of my emotions. And I guess you call it a review, but like that kind of stuff is also fun where like inspiration strikes and it's like, I'm trying to work out, like, I don't know how you write, but like for me, it's more like a process of like, I have to write it to figure out what it is versus like outlining or knowing exactly what it's going to be first when it comes to a review or editorial like that. So sometimes that's fun, is like sitting down and trying to work out like, how do I feel about this? Like, what are like how I'm trying to like unpack my emotions. Like essentially started with like, I was like crying 5 minutes into the West Wing special and I didn't know why. So it was like, let me try and unpack why. Because like nothing particularly like sad was happening, but this is a thing that like a lot of people felt when they watched it. And I was like, let me try to figure out what that is. And so like that was fun.
Oh, that's also half the fun of what we do, and I think how we consume content compared to, you know, maybe someone who just wants to sit back and relax and watch something, and there's nothing wrong with that. But half the fun of what we do is to sit there and to think about what you felt while you watch something and then try to understand why you felt it. So I understand that draw.
Well, and that's, you know, and that's Matt's philosophy when it comes to reviews. And I like that, is that, you know, a review is not necessarily to him a consumer reports. Like, it's not like you should or should not see it. It's, here is my worldview. Here is my perspective on what I saw. And that's why I like kind of reading reviews after I've seen a movie. Cause like, you know, two people can go into a movie and come out with two very different experiences, two very different, not even just opinions on whether it's good or bad, but like thematically, what was it about? Like, how did it touch you? How did it reach you? And that's all coming from your own personal experiences that you're bringing to the table and things that you're picking up on. So like, that's one of my favorite things at film festivals, like with you and Matt and, you know, Angie Han and like all of our friends we see there, is like going into a movie like Mother and coming out and like arguing about it on the escalator out of the Scotiabank Theater. I'm like, well, here's what I thought it was about. Well, here's what I thought it was about.
As much as I love that, I think my absolute favorite thing about TIFF is our now regular visit to Sweet Jesus.
Yes. Yeah, the ice cream.
I look forward to that year round, and I can't wait until we can go back, yes, to experience the festival again, but also to get Sweet Jesus.
And what's funny about that is that usually, like, our Sweet Jesus trip usually comes towards the end of the festival, so we're usually just standing there silent, like eating ice cream. Like, I'm tired.
Like, I wish someone would actually film that trip one time and just like put some super sad music in the background. But still, those moments fill me with joy. I feel like this past year though was especially sad because wasn't it raining?
Yes, it was raining. We were under like a tiny awning, and you were trying to get to the airport because you were going. Were you going on like a set visit or something?
I think I left that and went to I think I was going to another movie.
Okay, maybe Angie had to get to the airport or something.
Something like that. I think it might have been Angie. I think, like, didn't we go with Angie for lunch that day too? And she was like on a time crunch. Or,
maybe, yeah.
I feel like I remember the first few days of every festival very, very well, and then everything just mushes together.
Yeah, kind of blends together. It's hard to describe to people because it's a super fun experience, and we're incredibly privileged to see all of these movies. But it is very much, you do one of the midnight stuff, but like for me and Matt, it's getting up at 6:30, maybe 6 a.m. And seeing movies literally all day, maybe a lunch break, but it's like 2 hours for this movie. You got to go get in line for this next movie an hour or 45 minutes early so you can get a good seat. And then the next one. And while you're in line, you're sitting down on the floor of like a lobby in a multiplex trying to like bang out a review as quickly as possible.
Or like taking notes on my phone. Like I have so much absolute like gibberish on my phone from just like trying to write notes in between screenings. It's absurd.
And it's not even like, oh, my last movie is over at 6. Like, no, your last movie is over somewhere between like 11:15 p.m. or like 12:45 a.m.
That one year, the three of us stayed together. I felt so bad. I would walk in that apartment at like 3 o'clock in the morning on a regular basis, and the two of you would have to get up at the crack of dawn for like an 8 a.m. press screening.
At this point, like, I just know I'm not getting sleep at film festivals, so it's usually fine. And usually by like the third day, my body just shuts down. Like nothing can stir me or wake me. Like it will get as much sleep as it can, and then it's up to run to Starbucks and get a giant coffee.
I feel like I've just gotten used to the fact that I can push and make the most of every single day of a film festival except one. There's always that one where I've hit my breaking point and I just have to say, you know what, screw it, get a real amount of sleep and then get back to it tomorrow. And then I'm usually fine.
Yeah, it's usually you're pretty ambitious and then it's like, do I really have to go see that? And then you're secretly hoping the movie is bad so that you didn't miss something good.
That has happened far too often, or even just like those times where I have to choose between two I really want to say. Like there's a little part of me that is just always saying like, please don't let me miss out on the thing that's going to be huge.
Yeah, it's rough. Well, at Sundance this year, and it's still one of my favorite movies of the year, Promising Young Woman, is one that I was maybe like I couldn't figure out how to work it in. And like I finally through like a lot of like jumping through a lot of hoops got a ticket and ended up sitting with you and Thad. And I'm glad I did because like I was this close to just being like, it's going to come out this spring. I'll see if it comes out. And it didn't. Like,
that's been like one of the toughest and I think one of the more upsetting things. It's like on the one hand, I feel very, very lucky to have gotten to see some of those films early on, or even movies like A Quiet Place 2, like to get to see those movies as they were being promoted for their release. But like, I feel like it breaks my heart more having seen it and knowing that won't be shared with the world in the near future. And like, especially some of those Sundance movies, like I'm so happy that Minari is finally getting some promotion right now. It's about time. Yeah.
I love that film, but also like, how is it like, how are people going to be consuming it? And does it help or hurt it that it's going to be maybe more of a PVOD title? Or like, are people more willing to like rent it for $20 versus going to the theater? Because smaller movies like that, they do have a hard time at the box office sometimes. Especially like Minari is a foreign language film. It's mostly in Korean.
They do and they don't. Like I think about The Farewell and how that popped at the box office, or even like a documentary like RBG and the waves that made. So I feel I know it's like they have less of a chance to really make a mark on the box office compared to some of the bigger releases we get. But like the fact that the chance is there, I'm rooting for it to happen again. And now They don't even get the opportunity to try.
How is A Quiet Place 2? Did the embargo lift? Are you allowed to say?
The full embargo didn't lift, but the social media embargo did. So while I can't give you details, you can read my tweet and know that I liked it a lot.
Yeah.
and I can't wait for that movie to come out.
It's so weird that you've seen that movie, and I just forgot that it was supposed to come out this
year. Yeah, I think that was probably one of the last press screenings I went. The last screening I went to, though, was actually, and I had seen this movie in theaters way too much, but now I'm glad I went to this event. It was for The Hunt. They had a scaled down premiere at the ArcLight, and I went with Haley and Dorina, and we saw the movie again, and we went to this very small after party that they had, and now I'm like, oh, I'm so glad I did that because I haven't gone to a party since.
Yeah, I know.
What are you doing during lockdown that you had never done before? What's kind of the new thing you discovered that is actually brightening your day while we're all going through this?
Going on a ton of walks with my fiance. Gotta get out of the house, gotta get some fresh air, gotta do something that change the scenery. I mean, especially I don't know, I feel like we had a lot of stamina training for this because we've been working from home for a long time. I mean, I know you worked in the office in Burbank for a fair amount of time, but you also worked from home for a fair amount of time, and some days you would work from home. I've been working from home for 10 years, so I've kind of gotten the hang of it, but I don't know, there's something about not being able to go out to the movies or go and see your friends or really go and do anything that just get a little stir crazy. So we've just been, every evening we just go on a super long walk.
Walks are nice. How is what's the weather like there? How much longer do you have where it's not too cold to go out for a walk?
It's pretty cold today. I mean, I don't know, it usually starts getting cold in late November here.
Okay. You still got a little bit of time.
Yeah. I mean, we have blizzards and ice storms and stuff, and we have heat waves and tornadoes and all kinds of stuff.
Oh, a little bit of everything there.
Yeah.
I feel like this is the winter where I'm going to suck it up, bundle up, and actually go outside, even when it's cold.
Yeah, because
I'm a hibernator. December rolls around in New York, and I go into the apartment, and then I don't come out until February.
Yeah. I don't know. I think there's also just something mentally to know that you can't do it. It makes it even harder.
That's true.
I'm a homebody at heart. I'm an introvert, and I just one of my favorite things to do, on a Friday night, was just to settle in and watch a movie on the couch. But I've been doing that for how many months has it been now?
I've been conflicted about that. I feel like I am a homebody, but I also feel like the last 4 years in LA have created an insatiable itch to get out there and keep doing things. And I will say though, and this is the honest truth, as much as I miss working in the studio all the time, one of the things that has made every single day better since being in lockdown is the fact that I get to work more directly with you guys again.
Yeah.
I as much as I loved all the video content we were producing and the wonderful people I was working with, I missed you guys so much. And jumping back into the Slack and feeling part of the daily rotation is truly a highlight of my day.
I'm glad you think so, because it's just always chaos. It feels like it's just always so busy in that Slack channel.
It's always chaos and it's always so busy, but I feel like I appreciate that chaos. I'm thankful for that chaos and that busyness now more than ever. We're just so lucky to have a constant stream of work and things to cover. And I want to keep that going so badly.
I mean, I feel like we've adapted pretty well. I mean, we talk all the time about how right now we should be talking about Wonder Woman 3 and breaking down the ending of Wonder Woman in 1984 and, discussing all these blockbusters and stuff. But I mean, TV's been huge this year. There's been a ton of TV to cover. And, Matt has been enjoying getting to cover a lot of smaller films, a lot more documentaries. He did, you and he both did TIFF virtually this year. So we got to review Nomadland, which is, was one of my most anticipated films of the year. And hopefully I get to see it later this year. But
I hope so. I don't know what the plan is from here on out for some of those.
Yeah, it's tough. And also finding out what does the audience want? What are people doing? And are people getting tired of scrolling through Netflix? Or, I really enjoy, since so many people watch Netflix and Hulu and Disney Plus and Amazon and stuff, one of the fun things about our job is we get to help point people towards really good films on those streaming services, whether they're original or not, or underrated or not. Especially since that's how people find movies now. I mean, you and I grew up with Blockbuster, just going on Friday night and perusing the aisles and just picking out stuff.
Did you have a VHS tape rewinder?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
That's essential. I'm pretty sure it is still in this house, like where it was when I was a child too.
That's funny.
It's interesting living in a little time capsule right now.
Yeah.
Like
I can imagine.
A lot of weird things around here. And there's probably things on this board back here that like we probably both went to, at a Comic-Con or a festival or something.
Yeah.
I kind of do like it though. Talking about shining the spotlight on certain things that you really enjoyed in 2020 TV and film wise, what's like the absolute favorite? What is the thing that folks out there might not have watched that you say that they absolutely have to?
Like film wise, I mean, Palm Springs, I think, is still my favorite film of the year. We saw that at Sundance as well.
Yes.
You saw it at Sundance, right?
That was a night. I never do this. When I saw Palm Springs, I'm not a good, like I can't have a casual drink and then go see a movie. Like I'm done. I just can't stay awake. I can't fully soak it all in. But the location where we were doing interviews, it would have a party after our interviews were done. And I stayed for a party and I had a couple of drinks. And then I think it was something like an 11:30 p.m. screening of Palm Springs, saw the movie, absolutely loved it. And usually, like, I'm a big baby, I gotta go home and go to bed. But no, I went back to this venue and didn't get back to our house until like 4 a.m. That was it was a very like uncharacteristic night for me.
Yeah.
And it was so worth it because I had such a good time. And I saw that movie that is still in my top 3 of 2020.
It's so good. I mean, Promising Young Woman and Minari too. I haven't been able to stop thinking about those. Those are coming out. Promising Young Woman, I think, has a release date of December. So I think clearly focus is going for Oscars, although the Oscar deadline has been pushed this year. So it's February, I think, is the deadline have to have been released by the end of February in order to be considered. So that's why, like, Minari, I think, is coming out early 2021, but it'll be before that deadline. So I think Minari is probably going to get a big Oscar push. But that one melted my heart. I love that one as well.
The Oscar conversation confuses me. It's like already those preliminary conversations are starting to happen within, like critics organizations and guilds. And like when I look at my list, I'm confused. There's a lot of contenders and I've seen a lot of wonderful things, but I don't quite know where the cutoff is. And I don't quite know when some of those movies are actually going to be released. And I just feel like I don't have as concrete of a list in mind as I have in previous years. Yeah,
same here. I mean, because usually you have like a couple of like really exciting and like unique blockbusters, like Mission Impossible Fallout was one of my favorite films of that year. And that was a fun one to kind of champion and kind of throw in the mix. But this year is absolute chaos. And I kind of can't wait to see just like a really topsy-turvy Oscars. I hope that it continues to be this way, kind of.
I hope so too. I don't know how you feel about this, but I actually would have preferred if they had kept all the deadlines the same and just treated the Oscars like a little time capsule. Yeah. It's like every single time I want to get, a bird's eye view of what the landscape was like, I could look at who was nominated for an Oscar and what wound up winning. And just because we're in, this is an anomaly, like I still would have preferred that the Oscars and the nominations and the winner reflected what we went through this year.
I still think that it will, because I think that when they pushed that deadline, they were being optimistic that things would be back to normal with enough time to release the big, I think they were probably still hoping that West Side Story would come out in December and that Dune would come out in December. And like, those aren't going to happen. And they're not happening in January or February either. So I think it's still going to be pretty crazy. And I'm looking forward to it.
I'm looking forward to jumping in and seeing how it all pans out. And I'm hoping, who knows? Maybe this weird year is going to let the platform sneak in and get some Oscar nominations. I love the platform. You know that.
I hope that it is, because there are films like like probably Nomadland, like Trial of Chicago 7, like Mank, which I'm super looking forward to, and I really like Chicago 7, that are your kind of like standard Oscar fare that I think will get in. But I do hope, I would love to see Palm Springs. Like Palm Springs is one of the like best reviewed films of the year.
I think
it would be really cool if
anything,
like,
that script needs a nomination.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. That script is incredible.
That script is something else. The other one I'm hoping kind of, lasts through to when these nominations actually happen is Invisible Man.
Yeah. I like that one a lot.
Conversation was already starting in February when the movie came out. And I still think all this time later, even with all of the at-home releases that we've got, it's well deserving of some honors. I really do think that Elizabeth Moss needs to get that nomination for her performance.
Oh, for sure. And I think it's possible. Like, as I said, I mean, there's like, what else are they going to pick? Like, there's not the laundry list of,
no.
Again, like Spielberg moved his movie and he clearly wants West Side Story to be a big Oscar thing. Even like In the Heights was probably going to be something.
I was so excited for that.
Like essentially, like we're taking out the stuff with really big budgets, and so now it's going to be a lot of small. I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily. It's a more even playing field, but I do think it is a lot easier for something like Invisible Man to get in there because it's like, yeah, it was one of the best reviewed films of the year, and nothing else is clouding my judgment really, or not clouding judgment, but kind of like clogging up the feed, I guess.
Yeah. No, I would definitely see it panning out that way. And I kind of hope they stick to it, and it does, because I want to see movies like that get the recognition they deserve. I
just want the Oscars to be as weird as possible this year.
I'm all for that. And I'm curious to see what the broadcast is like. Have you seen any award show broadcasts or, unique spins on doing things that are traditionally in person, doing them virtually, that have really caught your eye that you hope that the Academy adopts for that ceremony?
I think the Emmys did it super well. Like that was really seamless. I think I don't know. If I've learned anything in 2020, it's not to try and predict what's going to happen next month, let alone next year. So I have no idea what the world is going to look like in March or April, whenever the ceremony is.
I think April.
But I think that was a really smart setup, and I think it led to some like nice moments as much as you could. I'm a huge fan of Succession. It was a little bit of a bummer for Succession not to get its big night. The Watchmen is like one of my favorite things that has been released in the last 5 years. So it was kind of a bummer to not to see, because it's always fun to like see everyone like rushing the stage and everyone together. But in terms of like doing the best you can with what you have, I think the Emmys pulled it off really well.
I did really like seeing the Schitt's Creek team. Like I'm kind of hoping that and again, terrible idea to make predictions this far out, but hopefully at that point in the year, it's a little more under control where, perhaps there could be pods of sorts for each big movie that gets a ton of nominations. And, you could have a mix of people, maybe even more people than usual, getting to attend, like other people involved that, usually sit like up in the rafters that don't get any recognition. Like members of the crew and stuff. I would like to see like little pods for each film brought together by kind of a central location where they're announcing these things.
I think that'd be cool too.
Yeah. I have one more question for you before I let you go. Are you rotating the posters behind you?
No, I should.
Wait, didn't you have something else behind you?
No, it's always been my little Gremlins 2 buddies.
I feel like don't you have
Smart Gremlin,
an MCU one?
Googly-eyed Gremlin, Phantom of the Opera Gremlin.
I love that. What's your MCU Mondo poster though?
I have a Guardians of the Galaxy by Franco Francavilla. But that's not up.
Do you not have a Captain America one? Why am I thinking Captain America or Thor or something?
No, I think the first Guardians of the Galaxy, it's the Franco Francavilla with Star-Lord and like the silhouette with the big red eyes.
I would never argue with some Guardians of the Galaxy artwork.
I've got Wizard of Oz over here and Baby Driver over here, which is a Mondo poster.
I've seen both of those.
I'm very lucky that Kevin Spacey's face is not on the Mondo poster, so I didn't have to hide it. It's the one with the record, with the car driving on the record.
Okay. I think I could picture it. I feel like I miss my Mondo post. Like all of my Mondo posters are in LA all alone right now. I did one year convince myself though that I was getting my parents a lovely, I can't remember what it was for. It might have been for Hanukkah or something. Like, you know, when you buy a gift for someone, but it's really for yourself. So they have a Home Alone Mondo poster in the house that I truly do love looking at now. But I feel like that was like a little selfish, but they tell me they like it.
I have a backlog of ones I need to frame, but I try not to like overwhelm the walls. Like I don't want it to be just like posters everywhere. So I don't know. We need to rotate out. It's also a negotiation with my fiance. Our living room is Disney themed, so we've got the Mondo Wally and the Mondo Little Mermaid.
There's some great Disney Mondo posters.
Yeah. The Mondo, they're both Tom Whalen. So the Tom Whalen Wally and the Tom Whalen Little Mermaid.
Oh, I love the Wally one.
Yeah.
I was this close to buying something Inside Out related, but my rule with Mondo, because I have so much of it, is it has to be like an absolute favorite movie for me to actually purchase something, but also I really need to love the design. And sometimes I can admire the design, but if I don't personally love it and it doesn't suit my taste, I can't let myself buy it.
That's Matt Goldberg's rule, which I have now adopted, is do I like the movie and do I like the design? If it's no to either one of those, I don't buy it.
You gotta draw the line somewhere. Yeah. Otherwise, your small space is screwed when you don't have anywhere to put anything.
And also, how many of that movie do I already have? Is the other thing.
The only two movies I won't apply that rule to are Jurassic Park and Scream. Like I have a stupid amount of stuff from both films, and like there's no stopping. And I'm okay with the idea of never stopping. All right, Adam, I will let you go. Thank you so much for hanging out.
Thank you for having me.
Talking about your work and your journey. Before you sign off, though, where can everybody find you beyond Collider.com? Are there any specific things, social media handles, your podcast you want to promote?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Adam Chitwood. And then Matt and I do the Collider podcast, which releases new episodes every Monday. And this week, our special guest is Bob Gale, the co-writer of the Back to the Future trilogy. We peppered him with a lot of questions, so that was fun.
Oh, I can't wait. All right, guys. We're out of here. Before I say goodbye, though, another big thank you to Adam. And seriously, I want the world to know this. You are, like, hands down one of the coolest managers. I always appreciate how you will drop anything to give me some input on something I'm working on. You're always so supportive. You always check in. More folks in charge should be like you. Adam Chitwood, you rock. Big thanks to everybody out there for watching this edition of